I just learned that I can just start without anything. That's nice. So, are we good to go? Yeah, perfect. Okay. So, good morning, everybody. My name is Klaus Leopold, and I'm from Austria. And what I do for a living is Kanban, basically. Nothing else. And I work as a coach and as a trainer, and I'm usually working with quite large companies. And that's probably why I've chosen this topic. It's about, let's say, Kanban at scale. So the title is, Don't Optimize Teams. Optimize Service Delivery. So what does this mean? Well, I give you an example of an environment where basically I was called to this environment. Yeah? So there was a project going on, and there were roughly 200 people in this project. So this setup is not something that I wanted to see or something like this. They were running this project. You know, Kanban is a lot about start where you are, so this is the starting condition. 200 people were working, and this is how they structured this project. So we got some kind of project management, which was a chief project manager and 5 project managers. So 6 people managing the project. It's only part of the story. There was another roughly 20 people behind these 6 project managers who were basically filling out Excel spreadsheets. So, but still, these 6 guys, they were really managing the project. Then we got a so-called product team. These guys, they were responsible to define the product. So there were business and marketing representatives in it. There was some kind of business analysts in it, and also architects, enterprise architects. So we're talking about a quite big company. And in a big company, you usually don't build a PHP script just like this. It has to fit in the overall software architecture, of course. That's what these 3 guys did. Then there were 10 development teams. And if you see how these development teams are structured here, you can get an idea what these guys were doing. So they were building some kind of web shop. So there was a web shop application. So we had 4 teams working on the web front end. We had 2 iPhone teams, 1 Android team, and a so-called shop team. So there was also some kind of physical shop where you could go in and buy some physical goods there. They developed this shop application, and we had 2 backend teams. 3 QA teams, 2 operation teams. Roughly 120 people here. And, well, the main dissatisfaction in this environment was, I have no clue what's going on. There are 200 people, and you could see they are typing something in their notebooks, but we have no freaking clue where we are. Will we meet our deadlines? It's just, a ride in a foggy area. So that was the main dissatisfaction. However, time to market could be improved in this environment, but really the main dissatisfaction was no coordination at all. Okay, so starting situation. What do you do in a situation like this? If someone calls you and says, okay, I want to improve this environment. Well, do we have Scrum guys in the room? Yeah, quite a lot of Scrum guys. Perfect. So what is the Scrum approach here? What is the Scrum approach here? If we take a look at this, development teams, quality teams, operation teams, that's bad, isn't it? Yeah? So we need to do some kind of restructuring here. We need to build cross-functional teams. Then if you take a look at the numbers are quite high. So we need to downsize them a little bit, right? And they would make very good Scrum teams. Yeah? So what do we do with the with the product team in a Scrum world? Product owners, exactly. They would make perfect product owners here. Then we have these project managers. Here it's getting a little bit more tricky, right? So maybe they need to find a different professional challenge. And then we go in and we do a little bit of training here. We have Scrum teams, we have product owner teams, we have CSMs, Scrum Masters, Product Owners, and everything will be fine, right? That would be basically the Scrum approach. What is the Kanban approach here? Well, I've shown this slide to really a lot of people. And if you also talk to a lot of quite experienced Kanban guys, the approach is a little bit different than the Scrum approach, but not so much actually. The approach is often like, you know, we don't need cross-functional teams here. That's fine, okay? So even product teams, so Kanban is all about start where you are, right? So we just basically leave it like it is here, and then we start to introduce Kanban on the team level here on these development teams. This is probably 90% of what I've seen or what I've talked to Kanban guys would recommend this way of doing it. And I think that's a very good choice to do it like this if you're a consulting company. If you're a consulting company, it's just awesome because, you know, you've really quite a lot to train here and to coach. That's a lot of billable hours, a lot of billable days. That's nice, yeah? However, as a company, so if this is my company, I would probably choose a different way of where to start to agilize or whatever you mean, whatever you want to say to this, in this environment. I think if you start here on the team level, there is one misconception what I see quite often, and that's this one. If you want to have an agile organization, all teams need to do some kind of agile method. And then you have an agile organization. And I think it's just not true. I think there are other ways. Let's take a look at this. Let's assume we have a team here, okay? So that's our team. And we want to become agile. We want to become better, whatever. So I looked up Wikipedia, and there are quite a lot of these agile software development methods out there. So there are these more obvious ones like Kanban and Scrum, but we have something like the Agile Unified Process. Never heard about this before, but there's quite a lot of these agile methods, okay? So we want to become better. Now, let's just install one of these awesome agile methods to this team. And the chances are pretty high that the performance of this team will go up, right? Chances are quite high that we will see improvement going on here. That's nice, perfect. So agile works. Let's roll it out. So usually there are a couple more teams around, right? So the idea is, if agile works, let's install Scrum, Kanban, whatever, on all of these teams. And then we basically have an agile organization, right? I don't think that's not true for one reason, and the reason is this. The point is, you can't view an organization as a, let's say, you can't view the organization as a container of independent teams. They are somehow interconnected, right? So if you have an organization with more than, let's say, 10 people or so, it's quite unlikely that there's only one team doing the whole product. Usually you need a lot of interactions between these teams, right? And let's not only think about software development. What about marketing? What about the operation guys? What about the legal guys? What about all the guys around to make a successful company? Well, I always try to use this picture of a keyboard. Let's assume this keyboard is our company. And what we are doing is, we are in the writing business, okay? So let's structure our company. Here we have our teams, right? Team 1 is responsible for the number keys on the keyboard. Team 2, Q, W, E, R, and so on and so on. And then there's this customer who wants to get a love letter from us. Now we have to figure it out how it works, right? The reality I'm in looks even a little bit more different like this. The reality I'm often in looks like that. You have even more than 4 teams. You have really a whole lot of teams here. You have an L team, you have a K team. You see that's a German keyboard. You don't recognize this, right? You have a H team. Each and every organization, of course, needs an A team. Without A team, you're basically screwed, right? Yeah, so that's our organization now. And now let's introduce Agile on all these keys. What do you think? If we have really the best K team on this planet, you know, when they are hitting the K, it's really smoke is coming out of the keyboard. What do you think? How much faster can we finish our letter? Yeah, not so much, right? So the point here is, when it comes to write the letter, it's not so important that each and every key is pressed very, very fast. It's much more important that we're hitting the right key at the right time. This could be even a little bit slower, right? So the point here is, when we transfer this to our world, it's not so important that each and every team is working very fast. It's much more important that each and every team is working on the right stuff at the right time. So there's a very smart guy called Russell Eckhoff, and he says, the performance of a system is not the sum of its parts. It's the product of its interactions. Right? The sum of the parts would be to optimize each and every team. But if you focus on the interactions, then you're optimizing the system. So if we transfer this to, let's say, Agile, we could rephrase this a little bit, which means agility of an organization is not having a lot of Agile teams. It's having Agile interactions between these teams, right? So, and that's exactly where I like to focus on when it comes to introducing Kanban into an organization. So do not optimize single parts of a system. This is a system. That's a BMW. And this is all the parts of a BMW. So I'm really not into cars, but it seems quite obvious to me is if we optimize whatever this part here is, if we optimize this part here, well, I'm not sure if the car is that much better. And if this kind of optimization would work, well, it would be actually quite easy to get the best car on this planet. We just send out some engineers to elaborate what are the best car parts. And they will probably find out the best engine is in a Ferrari, the best whatever seat, I don't know, is in a tractor, the best transmission. I'm not into cars, I'm sorry, but you know what I mean, right? So if we then take out all these parts, put them in front of us, that's the best car on this planet. But the point is, the car won't move an inch, right? So if we transfer this idea to our software project, what does this mean? Where do we start? I think it's not a smart idea to start here. I think it's a much smarter idea to start up there. Yeah? So the point is, focus on how you create value in this environment, and don't focus on the single parts. And how could you do this? How could you start improvement at this level? Well, it's actually quite easy. You know, there's something like Kanban. There are 6 practices and there are 3 principles. And you can apply just these 6 practices and 3 principles wherever you like. So Kanban does not say, use me on a team. Right? So there's nothing written down that Kanban is a team method. However, it works quite well in a team environment. But nobody says that you need to do Kanban on the team level. You could do these principles and practices on every layer in your, or at any scale basically, in your organization. So that's exactly what we did in the example before. So the point is, if you have this lever that you can influence a quite broad environment, pull this lever, right? And started the whole project. So how did we do this? Well, we basically did 2 steps. The first step was that we totally ignored, basically, the structure of the company. We just said, okay, there are 200 people. And these 200 people have basically the common goal to make the customer happy. So how do they do this? That was the very first step. Rethink your whole value generation process without any teams, first step. In the second step, we brought the organization into it. So then we thought, okay, now we know how we are creating value. Whom do we need for this? Okay? So how did we do it? Well, you know, in an environment of 200 people, it's quite hard to build a system design or a Kanban system with 200 people. So what we did is delegates, so each and every team sent delegates to a system design workshop. So I'm really not a fan of best practices. Best practice sounds something like you are no longer allowed to improve because that's already the best thing to do, right? I really like good practices, and this one is a very good practice. Whenever it comes to, if you want to change something, build a hierarchy bridging and cross-functional, let's say, change team. And that's exactly what we did here. So out of these 200 people, across different layers in the organization, like project managers, team leaders, business representatives, testers, we got these delegates together, and we basically said to them, okay, build a Kanban system. Like with the 2 steps I've said before, focus on how you create value, and second, whom do you need for this? Okay? Just by the way, that's not a good practice that I created or invented. John Kotter, a lot of people know John Kotter, yeah? John Kotter would say a guiding coalition to this, and it really works very well. Okay, so we got a bunch of delegates. I think it was 15 or so in this system design workshop. And then in the first step, we focused on how do we create value in this project. And this was the outcome. So these 15 guys agreed that they are creating value based on this. I don't want to go into detail here, but the general idea is a rough idea arrives, then they are concretizing this idea. Here they are developing it, and here they are shipping it. That was the common agreement between these 15 guys, that they are pleasing the customer like this. Then, the second step. So we didn't talk about any teams or whatever here, okay? Second step, whom do we need for this? Now, the teams came into play. So these were the different teams, and the arrows, they tell us where do we need these teams. And what you can see here is something I always see when I do this kind of exercise. So I think it's some kind of fairy tale that software developers are developing software. That's maybe their main focus or the main task what they are doing, but we need their knowledge in a lot of different areas. And not only of the software managers, also the business architects and so on and so on. Yeah, so having this picture, it was quite easy actually for these guys to come up with a Kanban system. And the Kanban system basically looked like this. So this was the Kanban system, how we managed work for these 200 people. What can we see here? I don't want to go into detail here, but the basic idea is this is some kind of upstream work here. So vague or rough idea arrives here. We are concretizing the idea, defining a so-called business epic. Business epic in their language is a potential sellable piece of software. Okay, so potentially sellable. So this is this business epic. Then we are reviewing the business epic, and then we are ready for development. Okay, very important. We have a rejected. What is it? Is it a column? I think it's a column, right? A rejected area here on the board, which is also, I think, very important because if you reject ideas in the beginning, it's actually quite easy. If you reject ideas somewhere down here, that's very expensive, right? So make it explicit that you're rejecting ideas and do it as soon as you can. That's also something what I see quite often, that a lot of companies only focus on this column, in development, right? So we want to have development that they are, super hyper productive, whatever. But the point is, if only crap comes in here, fast crap comes out, right? So yeah, focus also on the upstream here. So yes, now here we are ready for development. And here we basically have only one column which says in development. And this is where all the teams pull their work in. Then they are developing it. And when they are done, they just notify this board that they are done. And then we are integrating, testing, and so on and so on. Okay? So what I see quite often on a board like this, that the work item type changes over time, of course. In the beginning, we were talking about an idea. This idea is then transformed to a business epic, and in the end, we are talking about a release. So you see that the work item is changing over time. All right. Let's take a short break here. Not a break, or intermediate break. And let's see what we did so far, okay? So the point is, we only started on project level here. So in this environment, it was totally not mandatory that all the teams are doing Kanban. And that was a very smart decision, actually. So before I started with this project, I went to the cafeteria and I spoke a little bit to the people there. And it was quite interesting. So when I'm talking about this Kanban thing, I heard, or they gave me feedback, basically. And the feedback was something like, yes, Kanban comes, Kanban goes. So that's the next bandwagon we are jumping on. Nice. Kanban, whatever. So you could see the energy, right? So they were really willing to change. So if we would have introduced Kanban on a team level here, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't stand today here. Yeah. So I think it's quite great, actually, that you can improve your agility, that you can do Kanban without doing Kanban on a team level. These teams, there was no change in the way how they worked. So even if they would have been doing Scrum, that's fine for me. So the point is, I just want to focus on the coordination of all the 200 people. That's also a pattern I do quite often in Scrum environments. You see quite a lot of companies who are doing Scrum, and there are multiple Scrum teams. What I do is I basically introduce a Kanban layer above the Scrum teams, and we're coordinating the work of these Scrum teams. Works perfectly. So the point here was that, and that was very nice, that the teams started to pull Kanban. So in the beginning, they were like, yeah, we don't care. And then they saw that, I mean, we introduced Slack into the system. That's a logical consequence if you're working with work in progress limits, of course, right? So the stress level really went down, but the performance went through the roof. So the people were like, yeah, maybe this with this board and sticky note isn't that bad. So are we allowed to do it on a team level too? And we were like, yes, sure, of course. So we basically then started to introduce Kanban on a team level. So the teams, they pulled Kanban. And we started to do systems on a team level then. So this is one system which is done on the team level. It's important that each and every team builds its own Kanban system. So this is just one example of one team. What do we see here? Well, you basically have two swim lanes, right? This is where the business epic is on. This means here we only have two swim lanes. This means this team is only working on two business epics at the same time. Yeah. So they need to finish one of these epics to clear a swim lane, and then they can start another epic, okay? What are they doing here? This business epic is, from the point of view of the team, some kind of elephant. And how do you eat an elephant? byte per byte. Yeah? So what they do is they slice the elephant here, and they call it task stories. A task story is somehow a mixture between task and user story, so I don't care so much about words, so that is their language, I'm fine with this. So these task stories, pieces of the elephant, they were then developed, tested, and here we have this buffer called waiting for epic. So here, all the task stories went in, and when the last task story was developed, they basically attached the epic, the elephant, to the task story, and the epic was moving over the board. And when it ended up in the waiting for epic here, we knew, okay, all task stories for this epic were developed. Now we can review it. Then there was the team review going on for this business epic. And I think that's also an interesting part here. Here you see 2 lines. This means after the review, they notified the motherboard that this epic is done, and basically their work is finished here. So they no longer work on this epic. However, we see 2 additional columns here in the back, like integration tests and user acceptance tests. They modeled it, although it was done outside of their system. Why did they do this? Well, in their point of view, this is potential demand, right? So what if we got some defects here? We need to handle this. So what they do is they basically want to make the potential demand visible. If a lot of story, or in this case epics, pile up here, it's probably not the smartest decision to start new work in the beginning, right? So you need to get this feedback whether there's something done where we can finish it or not. So that's potential risk, actually. David was talking about risk before. That's potential risk, and they want to make this risk visible. All right, so this was the team level. And now, more and more teams started with Kanban. So we saw more and more of these boards popping up. And what we did, we always connected them to their upper layer. I will talk about this in a minute, okay? So still, there needs to be some kind of coordination, of course, right? So there are 200 people, we see a whole bunch of boards. So how do they actually coordinate their work here? Well, about coordination, remember, in the beginning, we didn't start on the team level. So whenever it comes to coordination, it was only the coordination for the 200 people. There was no team mindset, basically. And from the beginning on, we started with stand-up meetings. So we did stand-up meetings twice a week, on Tuesday and Thursday. And the teams basically sent delegates to the stand-up meeting. They were coordinating the work there. With this new information, they went back to their teams and brought the information to their team. So stand-up meetings from the beginning on, and we also did improvement meetings. We did retrospectives. I think everybody's familiar with retrospectives. But again, we didn't do team retrospectives. Teams didn't know what the retrospective is. We started with the retrospective for all the 200 people, for the whole project, because that's the thing that actually delivers value, right? So, and the system was basically, the same like with the stand-up meetings. So each team sent delegates to this retrospective, and then we were doing this retrospective. Right. So one more note here. In the beginning, how did these guys actually choose these delegates? Well, in the beginning, it was totally clear. There was not even a minute these guys thought about this, who the delegates are, the team leaders. It was just in their DNA. It was just in their culture, how they are working. So in the beginning, it was basically a meeting of team leaders. Then I tried to convince them that it's probably not the worst idea that we rotate this role. of the delegate. So that not only one person is going to this meeting, but each and every week a different person is showing up as a delegate in this meeting. And this was really a very, very smart move, because it brought much more knowledge of the whole, actually, than if only one person is going to this meeting, right? So I can really recommend this, this thing that you send or that you rotate these roles, whatever it is, like a stand-up meeting, even for the retrospectives, right? So this was the coordination in the beginning, only on the project level for the 200 people, because there was no team infrastructure. Then we started on the team level, and of course, we started with stand-up meetings on the team level. Some did it daily, others they somehow connected the cadence to the big board meeting. And we also did improvements on a team level, on a cadence of only a couple of teams were doing it on a bi-weekly cadence. Most of them chose a monthly cadence where they were running retrospectives. Yeah, so this was the coordination of this project. Well, I have a couple more minutes left. So I hope that I could show you that Kanban is totally not a team thing. I mean, you could do it on the team level, but whenever you have the chance to do it outside of the team, do it outside of the team, of course. So, but then there's this point, where do you actually start with your Kanban initiatives? And well, I tried to use this flight levels model just to clarify where you can start or where you can actually use Kanban in your organizational environment. So for me, it's just a communication model. Flight levels, so the metaphor is like flying. If you're flying very high, you see quite a lot on a high flight level, but you don't see a lot of details. If you're flying very low, you see a lot of details, but you don't see that much, right? So that's the idea behind the flight levels. So where can you do Kanban then? Well, there's flight level 1. You can do Kanban, of course, on a team level. Flight level 1 is when you're doing Kanban on a team level, and when you are focusing on tasks, like you're finishing tasks, and the input to the system is not coordinated. So often you have quite a lot of stakeholders here who are pushing work into the system, and these guys have to handle it. That's flight level 1, okay? You can do Kanban on flight level 2, so fly a little bit higher. Here, we are still on a team level, but on flight level 2, we don't have this task focus. We are focusing on flow. We're trying to focus on the flow and to establish flow in this team. And we have this funnel here, which stands for coordinated input. So it's no longer like this, that stakeholders are pushing work to the team, but there's some kind of input coordination going on. Flight level 2. We can fly even higher. We can fly on flight level 3. Flight level 3, for me, is if you have multiple connected teams and they are working somehow together. The point is that you are focusing on flow here, and you're trying to coordinate the work of multiple teams. Flight level 3, okay? And of course, there's input coordination going on. Then we can fly even one level higher, flight level 4, which is the portfolio level or the strategy level. So for me, flight level 4 portfolio is it's not about multi-project management or so. When I talk about portfolio, I think it's much more like Markus Andrzejczak, who's basically the pioneer of portfolio Kanban, would phrase it. It's about strategy. Strategy means you have some initiatives going on in your company, like we want to expand the market to, don't know, Hungary or Mexico. It's a little bit nearer here. Yeah. So what do we need to do? To make this work, or we need to cut the costs for 10% or so. So I mean, there's quite a lot of strategy work going on. And that's flight level 4, right? So on flight level 4, you're basically focusing on the strategy. And the point now is that you, of course, can connect these flight levels. Hopefully, there's something going on like what you're doing on your strategy is somehow fed into the organization, is somehow fed to your different projects, your different products, is fed into some teams. If you have some special team somewhere where you need this information, for instance, a rapid prototype, whatever. So you can connect, of course, these flight levels, and you need to establish some coordination. So there needs to be some kind of back loop in terms of coordination. The point here is you don't see any arrows to flight level 1, right? And that's why I wouldn't recommend to start on flight level 1 here. So whenever you have the chance, start somewhere up here. So I use this model to clarify where you can actually start with Kanban. So currently I'm involved in 3 initiatives in Germany, in India, and in China. And we're starting here on a portfolio level together with multi-projects and with teams for roughly 4,000 people. And if you start up here, you really have a lever in your hand. If you start here, you need to build quite a lot of change energy, and your lever is quite small, actually. However, one thing is important. I don't want to say that flight level 4 is better than flight level 2. It also solves different problems. So if you're having team problems, it's probably not the smartest idea to start with a strategy board, right? So it's also about, what kind of problem do you want to solve here? So this is the flight levels. They actually tell you where you can start with Kanban. All right, so 2 more minutes. I think it's time to wrap up. Well, what are potential takeaways, if you like? Well, I really do think that an organization is not a container of independent teams. So it's not about optimizing the single parts of an organization, optimizing the teams. It's about optimizing the whole. It's about optimizing the system. I like this keyboard analogy because, for me, it just makes sense. Don't focus on hitting the keys faster. Focus on writing letters faster. And that's a whole different story, actually. The other thing is, whenever you can start quite broad and high, I mean, high not in terms of legalize it, but in terms of hierarchy, okay? Pull this lever, okay? Start as high as you can. And there's the other thing, if you start on a quite top level, what you're actually doing is you're leading by example. And I think that's quite important. What I see quite often is that managers are like, yes, Kanban is a good thing, do it. You do it, right? So change doesn't involve me as a manager. If you guys are working better, everything is fine. Lead by example. Start on the top level and pull it into your organization. Pull it down to the team level. Yes. So one more statement and then I'm done. I think this whole scalability, scaling, agile, whatever discussion, I'm not smart enough for this. I basically don't get it. So when it comes to scalability, I don't see the problem. There are principles, there are practices of Kanban. So Kanban for me is inherent scalable. Just do Kanban on, real Kanban at any scale in your organization and you're good. And that's it. Thank you.